Travel is great, isn't it? Who here loves to travel? Who wants to travel more? Me too. But what is it about travel that we love so much? Right? It is because travel itself, the idea of travel is romantic. Not in the erotic sense, but in the literature sense. It's romantic. That, the thought of being able to escape from the mundane, able to rejuvenate from the daily stress of lives, right? And the idea that when we travel, we get to put our feet up, relax, reconnect with our inner selves, right? And then there's this idea of the 3S, the sea, the sun, and the sand. The promise of fun and excitement, right? And then some of you might argue there's a 4th S. Any idea what the 4th S is? We talked about it a lot this morning with Katrina. I've got a confession to make today, but first I want you to make a little confession to me. Raise your hand if you've ever thought about how long your flight's going to be. Yeah? Okay. Now, raise your hand if you've ever thought about the potential of missing your plane. And raise your hand if you've ever thought about your plane going missing. And raise your hand if you've ever been worried about your children, your partner, your parents, your plants, your pets when you're traveling. Raise your hand if you've thought about how other people in your travel party might think, in your travel group. Right? Raise your hand if you've ever thought about safety when planning or going on a trip. All of us. Yeah, I have too. I've thought about all these things. But that isn't my confession. My confession is this. I'm a women travel researcher, and with my work, I aim to help women travel better, so that women can have better travel experiences. But I fear that all the work that I've done so far is only helping marketers better target women on holidays and not necessarily helping women experience better holidays. So today, I want to try and change this, and I want to try and provide you with some insights on how we can emotionally maximize from our travel. Good? Is that all right with you? Okay, so we'll try. So not too long ago, when I told people that I was going to Pakistan, in Lakarna to be specific, almost everyone who cared about me, like Katrina, told me not to go. Because first of all, I was going there as a single woman, but I was also going into a very male-dominated environment. And this picture just demonstrates that. I was there to give a university, to talk at a university event. But what was worse, according to my well-intended advisors, is that I was also a pregnant woman. And you can see the belly a little bit protruding out there. I was just into my 2nd trimester. Right? And funnily, all this advice came only from women. But in hindsight, it's not surprising because research has shown us that women, when they travel, are more likely to perceive greater risks than males. And that they are also more likely to feel more vulnerable and insecure than males when we travel, right? But the problem is this, that when we talk about these things, what happens is that these beliefs, these perceptions, this discourse constrained women travel even further. So that in the cases of my advisors, who themselves will not go to Pakistan, but also in my case, where that perception of vulnerability was transferred and spread to me, So that I, who was not afraid to go in the first place, became increasingly worried. And if I didn't have that auditorium of people expecting me to speak, I would have canceled the trip, right? Right, so today I would like to introduce to you this term, the geography of fear. And to make it a bit more specific, I'll call it the geography of women's fear. And this refers to these restricted geographical boundaries of women's mobility. In travel and tourism, the geography of fear refers to spaces and places where where we as women are advised not to go, only women, right? You're familiar already with some of these terms: dodgy neighborhoods, suspicious streets, back alleys, nightclubs, even nighttime. So as women, we have this mental map of a list of unsafe places that we shouldn't venture into. Right? If you key in travel tips for women, I'm not talking about safety tips, just travel tips for women, the results are quite terrifying, because what you'll get is almost everyone telling us that it is not safe to travel. Right? So here we have a problem. On one hand, we have images of fun, relaxation that we saw before at the start. But on the other hand, we have messages like this, that is not safe, that is scary. It's quite terrifying. It's quite torturing, really. You know, imagine winning $500,000 worth of lottery, only to be told that you have to swim across a crocodile-infested river to go get it. It's almost like that, isn't it? What about males? What do you think you get when you key in travel tips for men? Any ideas? Right? How to pick up women? Two things. How to pack. Because the women have been doing all the packing for them, right? And how to dress. Right, so these differences in the Google results really emphasize that tourism is gender biased, but also it is actually implicitly and indirectly disempowering women travel. Right? So now that we understand the geography of women's fear, what should we do about it? Well, I think we should first engage with this understanding, this new understanding, by resisting these vulnerable identities, by not spreading or overemphasizing vulnerability. We know, but we don't have to overemphasize that. So for example, you can tell me not to go to Pakistan because it is politically unstable, which applies for men as well, but don't tell me not to go to Pakistan just because I'm a woman. Instead, give me strategies, right? When you see news or hear stories about women getting killed or raped while traveling, know also that there are news about men getting robbed and punched and killed. It's just that their stories are not as dramatized, not as politicized. And this is important for our men. If my son wants to travel, I want him to know that he's not a superhero, that only my daughter needs to be worried, that he doesn't need to be worried. Yeah? And even when you travel together, this is a couple, this just happened last month, and all these stories only happened in the last 3 months. These are only stories happen. And even when you travel together, you can still get killed, right? So it's not just women. So in my case, I did make it to Pakistan that year, and it was supposedly unsafe to the extent that I have to be escorted 24/7, like Katrina, like Datin Paduka Maimuna speech last night. But, 4 months later, this little angel was born, so I was fine, pregnant or otherwise, right? So by now, I have 1 child, but I also have 2 other children. Brendan showed his picture of his kids. I thought I might do the same. So who here have children? Have you? Right. So those of you who raised your hands, you know that the next time you get to travel is about 15 years from now. Right. So research shows that for those who have children, leisure consumption for those who care for children, are simultaneously laborious and recreational. That is, the divide between work and leisure is very blurred. So mothers, more so than fathers, always have been reported to struggle trying to balance between spending time with the family while we're on holiday and also time for myself, right? And mothers with young children and babies, well, they have been reported to experience exhaustion from trip preparations, right? They've been reported to experience anxiety from the anticipation of flying. And then they have been reported to experience guilt from their children misbehaving in public tourism spaces. And those of you without children, yeah, it extends to you as well. Those of you who are carers of your parents, those of you who care for grandchildren when you go on holidays, this extends to all of us. So the social expectations for all of us to be good daughters, good mothers, good wives, good daughter-in-laws, good grandmothers, right, is problematic because it brings with this the idea that we have to look after everybody else. So when we travel with our siblings, with our parents, with our family, what do? We make sure that everybody else is taken care of. We make sure that everybody is having a good time. We put together a great holiday package, right? And execute it to the level that put the professionals to shame. And then we come home kidding ourselves that we've had a holiday. Right? So these social expectations bring with them a psychological risk, a social and psychological risk. And it's not great for us because it then leads to guilt, right? We feel guilty for even thinking about how nice would it be if I have a small pocket of time to myself. We feel guilty when we think about how free travel would be one day when our parents are no longer around. Not doing it, just thinking about it, we feel guilty, right? We feel guilty for wanting to do one thing that we want to do, not one thing that everybody in the travel party wants to do. I struggle with this guilt for decades. I struggle with it. But when I understood the role and the impact of gendered expectations on women's travel and well-being and reflected back on my own experiences, I began to take baby steps to try and overthrow this guilt. Right? So what did I do? When I first go on holidays with my 3 children and my husband, I negotiated for small pockets of time where I have time for myself. Right? And that's important. So it's whether it's reading or saying, can I nip downstairs for an hour and a half of a massage and come back up? And then that 1 or 2 hours grew into 1 day overnight. And then it became 3 days. And then it became 1 week. And then it became 1 whole month. I just came back from 1 whole month in Spain. Just last month, actually, I just returned. So what I did was this: I graduated in this whole month alone by myself. And my mother, who's sitting here, I have to apologize to her. She wanted to come to Spain. And I said, no, Mom, I'm sorry. This is for myself. This is for me, right? And so I signed up for a full-time language course in Spanish, because that's my lifelong goal. I wanted to pick up a foreign language. So I signed up for a course, and I ate paellas and tapas and drank sangrias, and I didn't have guilt. I miss my family, but I didn't have guilt, because now that awareness is there, right? The social expectations, the gendered roles. And what I experienced then was something that I needed for a long time. And I can't explain that in detail in the time that we have, but it was amazing, right? For the soul, for the spirit, it was so good. And I came back a better person, a better mother, a better wife, a better daughter. And yes, si ahora puedo hablar español un poco. I can speak a little Spanish. Okay, so my final thought is this: that tourism historically has been reserved for men. It's always been limited to men, and a few handful number of Oh, I forgot to say this. To overcome guilt, you have to do a few things. You have to prepare, right? You have to prepare for it, and you have to train yourself that it's okay for you to go and have time for yourself, but you also have to prepare to say, guilt, look, you don't have a space because I took care of everything. So I prepared. I cooked 28 dinners in 1 day. And I labeled it, and I put it on a calendar, and my husband didn't have to think about anything. He just took out every day, oh, this is what we're eating today. This is what we're eating today. So those are my 28 meals. So historically, I was saying that tourism was reserved for men, and only a handful of women of the leisure class gets to travel. So when tourism is only marketed and promoted to men, so very naturally, all our tourism communication is highly sexualized for men, right? So in these images, and these are all very recent, including the one, the retro one, that has just been taken late last year in Copenhagen. So all of these tourism communication are highly sexualized in the sense that women are always projected as producers of tourism. We are not the consumers. We don't consume tourism, we produce tourism. We are the hostess, we are the entertainers, we are the waitress, we are we're the producers. All right? And then we have, when women say, but now we are consumers. So yeah, they're trying to say, okay, women do consume tourism. We need to think about women in our advertising brochures. But still, women are objectified. So in this picture, you see the man is a subject. He is active. He's shredding waves. But the woman, she's not really a subject. In actual fact, her back is arched, and I don't know any woman who can be comfortable in this position for a long time. Right? Her back is arched, right? And she is there for everybody to view. Right? She's there for people to enjoy. She herself isn't really enjoying. So women is still subjectified, even as a consumer. Right? So what this means for you is, you and I are not expected to do things that are clever or exciting, right? We are not expected to shred waves, to climb mountains, right? So what happens is the tourism providers don't give us that. They give us things that we don't have to do very much. We don't have to do very cleverly. A lot of my research is on girlfriend getaways, right? And a lot of work that I do for girlfriend getaways, I've interviewed and talked to more than 1,000 women worldwide, in Asia, in America, in Europe. And almost all the women we talk to have, consciously or unconsciously, say that they want activities that are empowering. They want activities that when they return to, they feel like they have bettered themselves, that they are empowered. And yet, tourism providers offer us no such thing. All the packages that we've researched on girlfriend getaways offer us things like that, images where we do nothing. So I've been going around telling destinations, airports, airlines, accommodation, restaurants, wineries. I've been going around telling these people, you need to give us something more, right? And we are working with some destinations. I'm now working with regional destinations to come up with activities that will empower women, where women will be educated, where they will feel that they have bettered themselves, right? But in the meantime, what do? Right? We need to travel anyway. So you don't want to pay $100 and get shortchanged and get $10 worth of travel. Right? So what do? We have to deliberately seek out activities that will empower us, activities that perhaps even, dare I say, a little bit outside your comfort zone. Seek out activities that you haven't done and something that is a little bit outside your comfort zone, because research shows that when you do these things and you overcome them, when you overcome risk, when you overcome things that you're uncomfortable, you experience emancipation, you experience freedom, and that makes a trip worthwhile, right? As a few women here have already attested to, right? So those things are very important, and those things are not said enough in tourism brochures, in tourism communication, and so we have to fight for our own travel experiences, the quality of our own travel experience. But in concluding, I want to say this, that I have to apologize to you for popping your bubble. I apologize, oops, there goes the ring. I apologize for showing you that travel for women, whether you're traveling solo or with your family or with your girlfriends, that it is not yet ideal. And that is the picture that tourism providers want to sell us. But they are not providing us with those things, right? So, but we need to travel anyway. So we might as well claim the most out of it by employing either one or a combination of those 3 strategies that I shared with you today. And the first is turning around the discourse on women, travel, and safety. How can we better make it more positive? Because we know that risk is necessary for emancipation. Number 2, kill guilt. Or make guilt your friend. How to placate guilt and go out and have fun. Go out and have a better quality experience rather than just go out. And lastly, seek out the active and the new experiences, because those are the ones that really, really matter. Thank you.